Last time we looked at the absolute chaos of Rangers' first transfer window after they were liquidated and had to start again from the bottom. Now, it's time for round 2. After winning the Scottish 3rd Division, Rangers were now in League 1, and going into the 2013-14 season, it was time for a new batch of players. Bilel Mohsni. There's never quite been another player in Scottish football quite like Bilel Mohsni. He arrived at Rangers in 2013, and after being on trial for a few weeks, he signed a 2-year deal with the club. He'd previously been at Southend where he was highly rated, but he'd actually been refusing to play for the whole of the previous season. So when he signed for Rangers, it was difficult to tell whether he was a genius or a lunatic. In the end, he might have just been both. His debut came in a 5-1 win over Arbroath, instantly becoming a bit of a fan favourite. And to be fair, he wasn't half bad. In League 1, he played 28 league games and scored 10 goals, including an overhead kick as a centre-back. He was part of the Rangers team that won League 1, but going into his second season with the club, the disciplinary issues started to come. In pre-season, not even a competitive fixture, he was sent off for a headbutt against Derby County, which saw him banned for the first 2 games of the season. A couple months later, he was in more trouble after he punched Liam Fontaine in a match against Hibs. That saw him given a 3-match ban. Then there's the moment that pretty much defines his Rangers career. May 2015, it's the final day of the season and Rangers have just lost the Premiership playoff against Motherwell. As the full-time whistle blew, Lee Erwin shoves him in the back, and Mohsni just loses it. He kicks him, he punches him, and at one point, he's in a brawl with 4 Motherwell players. There's fans running on the pitch as if they're going to get involved, and he's dragged down the tunnel. There's an investigation by Police Scotland, the SFA give him a 7-match ban, but unsurprisingly, that was the end of his Rangers career anyway. John Daly. John Daly's signing for Rangers in 2013 was big for a few reasons. Not just because he was a proven Scottish Premiership striker, or because he'd captained Dundee United to a Scottish Cup win, but because he became the first Irish Catholic to ever sign for Rangers. He arrived after the club had been promoted to League 1 and straight away slotted into Ali McCoist's new look team. Big target man, great in the air, old school number 9. Like most players on this list, he actually started as a trialist before the transfer embargo lifted. And once he officially signed, he hit the ground running. He scored 25 goals in all competitions that first season, including 4 in one game against Stenishmuir, and even managed a couple of hat-tricks. Rangers went unbeaten, strolled to the League 1 title, and Daly ended up in the PFA Team of the Year. But his second season didn't go nearly as well. Injuries hit early, and by the time he was back fit, Rangers had brought in Chris Boyd and Kenny Miller, leaving Daly way down the pecking order. He still chipped in with a few goals, but it was clear his time was up. When he left in 2015, he didn't hold back, taking a dig at the board for how they treated players who'd been out of contract following their failure to win the championship. He signed for Raith Rovers not long after, then retired and moved into coaching. Cammy Bell. Cammy Bell was one of Rangers' first big-name signings heading into the 2013-14 season. A League Cup winner with Kilmarnock, he even had a Scotland cap, and he was seen as a proper safe pair of hands to help the club climb back up the leagues. He joined on a pre-contract that summer, and when he finally made his debut against East Fife, he immediately became Rangers' first choice keeper. To be fair to him, he was solid that year. Rangers stormed League 1 and Bell was in goal for almost every game that season. But things started to go downhill not long after that. In August 2014, he picked up a really nasty shoulder injury that ruled him out for months, and when he came back, he never quite looked the same. His worst moment probably came in the playoff final against Motherwell. Rangers needed to win promotion, but Bell had an absolute howler for the opening goal in the second leg, and it all went downhill from there. They lost 6-1 on aggregate. By the next season, Mark Warburton had arrived, signed Wes Foderingham, and Bell was basically finished as Rangers number 1. He didn't play a single game that year and quietly left the club in 2016. After that, he bounced around a bit, Dundee United, Hibs, Partick Thistle, Falkirk, Queen's Park, and even ended up as the director of football at Annan Athletic. Arnold Peralta. Peralta came to Rangers in 2013 from Honduras, a full international, an Olympian, and on paper, probably the most interesting signing of that window. He arrived with real pedigree. He'd been capped by his country and immediately stood out for his energy and aggression in midfield. When he finally got the chance to play after Rangers' transfer embargo lifted, he actually made a decent impression. He scored his first competitive goal against Stranraer in April 2014 in a match that saw Rangers hit the 100-point mark on their way to winning League 1. But like a lot of that that squad, his Rangers spell was short-lived. He left in January 2015 by mutual consent, heading back home to join Olimpia, one of the biggest clubs in Honduras. Tragically though, just a few months later in December 2015, Arnold Peralta was shot and killed in his hometown of La Ceiba at only 26 years old. It was a shocking story, and there was a minute's silence held at Ibrox in the following days. His time at Ibrox might have been brief, but he's remembered as someone who gave everything on the pitch, a Honduran international who lived his dream of being a professional footballer. Nicky Law. Nicky Law might be one of the most underrated players from Rangers' lower league rebuild. He joined Rangers in 2013 after impressing at Motherwell, where he'd been good enough to make the PFA Scotland Team of the Year. And when Rangers came calling, he said it was impossible to turn down. Apparently Ali McCoist's passion in the meeting had helped seal the deal. And Law didn't waste any time making an impression either. 2 goals on his debut as a trialist in the Challenge Cup against Albion Rovers. Then he scored again in his first league match against Brecon. He was one of a few signings that actually looked like a proper Rangers player. Cam on the ball, got forward well, chipped in with the goals. He ended up being their top scorer in 2014-15 with 13 goals, which for a midfielder is genuinely impressive. But good times didn't last. By the time Mark Warburton came in, Law was in and out of the team. He had a strong start under the new manager, but then got injured. And when he came back, he just couldn't get back to the same level. He left in 2016 when his contract expired. Nicky Law might not go down as a Rangers legend, but he definitely was one of the more professional and consistent players during the time when the club were still finding their feet. Nicky Clark. When Nicky Clark joined Rangers, it was a bit of a family moment. His dad, Sandy Clark, had played for the club years earlier, so there was a real sense of following in his footsteps. He arrived after a brilliant season with Queen of the South, where he'd scored 41 goals in one season, and there was a lot of excitement about what he could do at Ibrox. He made an instant impact, scoring just 30 seconds into his debut against East Fife, as Rangers cruised to a 5-0 win. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Clark found himself in and out of the team, struggling to cement a starting place early on. That changed when he exploded into form. 4 goals in one game against Forfar Athletic, the kind of performance that reminded everyone why he was there. Unfortunately, injuries slowed down his progress, including a broken foot that kept him out for weeks. But when he was fit, he always seemed to find a way to score important goals. By the end of that season, he was part of the Rangers team that went unbeaten in the league and clinched the League One title, a small but proud chapter in the club's rebuild. He stayed until 2016, even scoring in a crucial win over Hibs that helped Rangers stay top of the Championship, before being released that summer. He went on to have a solid career in Scottish football. Richard Foster. Richard Foster's Rangers story is a bit of a strange one, because he actually had 2 spells at the club, with a good few twists in between. He first arrived on loan from Aberdeen back in 2010-11, where he helped Rangers win the league title, featuring regularly as they went on to lift the SPL trophy under Walter Smith. But he made a permanent return to Rangers in 2013. By then, the club were rebuilding in League One, and Foster was brought in for his experience and versatility. He featured 38 times across his 2-year spell, helping the club to another league title as they climbed back up the leagues. After leaving Ibrox, Foster went on to win the League Cup with Ross County, and then had a solid few years with St Johnstone. Stephen Smith. Stephen Smith's Rangers story is one of massive promise, brutal luck, and eventually a full circle return. He came through the youth system and made his debut back in 2004, but it was the 2005-06 season where he really broke through. Still just 21, he was bombing up and down the left flank, even playing in the Champions League against Villarreal, and by the end of that season, he'd nailed down the left back spot and picked up the SPL Young Player of the Month award. It looked like Rangers had found their next big homegrown star, but then disaster struck. A recurring pelvic injury hit him hard, and it just wouldn't go away. He ended up missing more than a year of football, and by the time he returned, the team had moved on. What should have been some of the best years of his career were spent fighting to get fit again. And after a few more years at the club, including a League Cup win in 2010, he eventually moved on, with spells in England at Norwich and Preston, and even a stint in the MLS with Portland Timbers. Then in 2013, he came back home. Rangers were in League One, rebuilding from scratch, and Smith, now more experienced, was brought in as a steady hand to help guide them back up. He made over 100 appearances across his 2 spells, helping the club go a full league season unbeaten in 2013-14 and winning yet another league title. And most recently, he was the interim manager at Rangers for about 2 weeks after Russell Martin was sacked. Steve Simonsen. He joined in 2013 as a backup to Cammy Bell, having already played down south for years, with the likes of Everton and Stoke. His debut came against Forfar, where he pulled off a ridiculous reflex save that had fans thinking, yeah, not a bad backup keeper. Unfortunately, things went downhill pretty quickly. His next big appearance came in the Scottish Cup semi-final against Dundee United, and it did not go well. A mishit kick straight to an opponent led directly to United's third goal in a 3-1 defeat, and Ali McCoist basically said afterwards he had no sympathy for him. Simonsen later called it a cruel moment, which to be fair, it kinda was. Despite that, he stuck around and re-signed the following season. When Cammy Bell got injured, Simonsen became the first choice and played 30 games, including the much-hyped 2015 League Cup semi-final against Celtic. Rangers' first meeting with them in 3 years. They lost 2-0, but at least Simonsen can say he's been part of one of those fixtures. Then came the off-pitch drama. He was hit with a betting ban after being found guilty of gambling on football matches. The SFA gave him a 2-match suspension, which some thought was way too lenient, sparking a full-on debate about player punishments. But by the end of that season, Rangers had failed to win promotion, and Simonsen was one of several players released.